Good day, everyone. I am Charan May Maglante Singh, and today I'll present my project on microwave point-to-point link design connecting Ligao, Kamalig, and Daraga here in Albay. This project is designed to actually be deployed in real-world application to bring reliable internet and communication to remote areas in our region. Let me walk you through how I made this happen. Before we jump into the technical stuff, let me give you the context. Microwave point-to-point communication is a critical technology for connecting remote areas where fiber optic infrastructures is impractical or too costly. This project addresses the connectivity challenge in Bicol by designing a reliable two-hop microwave link connecting Ligao, Kamalig, and Daraga. Basically, microwave communication is one of the most reliable ways to connect distant locations without laying cables. And think of it as creating an invisible highway through the air at really high frequencies. In my case, I used 6.3 gigahertz. What's important to understand is that this technology works best when we have a clear straight line path between the transmitter and the receiver, and that is called the line of sight or the LOS. It's just like how light travels. You need an unobstructed path for the signal to get through clearly. My main goal here was simple but challenging, and that is to design a link that works at least 99.999% of the time. That sounds very high, but it actually means we can only have about 20 seconds of downtime per year. That's how reliable I need it to be. So let me break down what I'm working with. I'm starting from Tuburan in Ligao as my transmitter and receiving the signal at Kiwalo in Daraga. And I'm using 6.3 gigahertz frequency, which is what we call the C band. And also, I limited the budget to 3 million peso. And my transmitter can send 3 watts of power. Actually, these constraints shape everything I decide, especially when you have a tight budget and have a high reliability requirement. Now, here's where the real engineering challenge comes in. I started by checking if I could just create a direct link from Ligao straight to Daraga. Let me show you what I found. As you can see, this profile shows the terrain between Ligao and Daraga, all 20 kilometers of it. What you're seeing here is that the Tinago Mountains in the middle actually blocks the direct path. Even though we can see across 20 kilometers, the terrain is too high in the middle to allow clear line of sight. The signal would hit those mountains and get blocked. So we faced a choice, either find a higher location for the transmitter or introduce a repeater station in the middle. Since we can't move the towns, I choose the option 2, and that is to add a repeater. The repeater site is actually critical. It has to be positioned where it can see both the transmitter and the receiver. And I found the perfect location at Barangay Tinago in Kamalig. Why there? First, look at the elevation. It's at about 318 meters above sea level. That's higher than most surrounding terrain. And that gives us a natural advantage, actually. Second, it's accessible by road. That matters for maintenance and for getting equipment to the site. And third, this is important. It's positioned almost exactly in the middle, so the signal doesn't have to travel too far on either side. And by putting the repeater there, we break that 20-kilometer link into two shorter links, which are the 13.167 kilometers from transmitter to repeater and 6.946 kilometers from repeater to receiver rather. Both of these have clear line of sight. I also confirmed site accessibility using Google Earth imagery on this one. At the repeater site, you can see it's an open area, empty terrain with the road running nearby, and that's actually ideal for a 30-meter tower. There's no building, there's no buildings blocking the area, no dense forest directly overhead, and that was the key consideration. And for the transmitter and receiver sites, same thing. Open areas where we can install tall towers without worrying about local obstacles. Now that we know where to put everything, the next question is, how tall do our towers need to be? This is where physics comes into play. And there are actually several factors that affects antenna height. The first one is the ground elevation. And we have to start from the actual ground level. The second one is the Earth's curvature. Yes, the Earth's round and at large distances that matters. The third one is the Fresnel zone clearance. This is actually very important. The signal doesn't travel in a single ray. It spreads out in what's called the Fresnel zone. And we want the terrain to clear at least 60% of that zone. The fourth one is the vegetation. Trees and buildings can actually absorb signal. So we really need to clear above them too. And using a standard formula that combines all these factors, which is antenna height is equal to ground elevation plus earth bulge plus Fresnel clearance plus fade margin. For all three sites, we calculated that 28 meters of antenna height gives us everything We need. That sits on top of 30-meter tower, so the total height is about 58 meters in the air. And the reason we choose 28 meters of antenna height specifically because it's a sweet spot. It's high enough to meet all our clearance requirements, but of course not so high that we're fighting excessive wind loading on the antenna. Next. Okay, now let's talk about hardware. I choose rather three critical components. First is the antenna, a 1.2 meter parabolic dish. This is a standard size in the telecom industry. It gives us 37.2 dBi of gain. That's a measure of how well the antenna concentrates the signal in one direction. Why 1.2 meters and not bigger? Actually, bigger antennas give more gain, yes, but they cost way more and they catch more wind. Our 1.2 meter size is the industry sweet spot for this application, and you can get good performance without excessive cost or complexity. Second is the waveguide, which is the RFS Flexible EP78J. This is a premium elliptical waveguide. Okay, let's proceed with the link budget. The first half to transmitter to repeater. Now I get to the math that actually proves this actually works. This is the link budget, and think of it like a financial budget, but for signal power instead of money. I start with 34 decibels above a milliwatt of power. That's my 3 watts of transmit power. Then add the antenna gain, another 37.2 dB. That brings to 67.38 dBm effective isotropic radiated power. That's my effective sending power. But then the signal has to travel 13.167 kilometers through free space. At this frequency, that causes a loss of 131.3 decibels. That's a huge loss, but it's just physics. Signals always spreads out as they travel. So on the receive end, the repeater antenna catches some of that spread signal and concentrates it again with its 37.2 dBi again. Then the waveguide causes a 4.1 dB loss, getting the signal from the antenna to the receiver. And the final received signal level at the repeater is negative 32.13 dBm. Now here's the critical part. The receiver can actually detect signals down to negative 85 dBm. That's the receiver sensitivity, and we're only at negative 32 dBm, which means we have a fade margin of 52.87 decibels. For the link budget for the second half, which is the repeater to receiver, and the repeater doesn't just passively receive and resend. It actively boosts the signal. We use a 63 dB linear amplifier plus 25 dB of RF gain. That's standard for this type of repeater system. The weak negative 32 dBm signal that arrives at the repeater gets amplified and retransmitted at 61.67 dBm. Hub 2 is only 6.94 6.946 kilometers, so the free space loss is smaller. Which gives us 125.3 dB instead of 131.3 dB. So the shorter distance means less spread, so less loss. Then same process, antenna gain, waveguide loss, and we get our received signal of negative 30.15 dBm at the final receiver. The fade margin here is 54.85 dB, actually slightly better than the first half. Why? Of course, the path is shorter, even though we're working harder to generate EIRP at a repeater. We don't have to travel as far, so we need up with slightly more. No, I mean, so we end up with slightly more signal at the end. For the system reliability and carrier to noise, let me show you what all this math means for actual reliability. The fade margins we calculated, or calculated, um, which gives us 52.87 dB on HAP 1 and 54.85 dB on HAP 2, translate directly to propagation reliability. In the first HAP, there is a 99.999,944% reliable HAP. For the HAP 2, there is 99.99,962% reliable. When you combine both HAPs, the and calculate overall system reliability, we get 99.999,995%. That exceeds our 99.999% target. In terms of actual downtime, this equals about 26 seconds of outage per year. That's during monsoons, heavy rain, and worst case atmospheric conditions. During normal conditions, the system should be 100% up. The carrier to noise ratio of both HAPs is 64.283 dB. That's actually excellent. It means the signal quality is clean and clear, and digital data can be reliably modulated and demodulated. This is where the engineering rigor comes in. We didn't just meet the requirement, we exceeded it. So we have comfortable safety margins. Okay, for the cost estimation, I have to be honest about the money side, and the equipment and installation for this project comes to approximately 5.14 million pesos. Okay, for the regulatory and deployment pathway. Deploying this isn't just about building, it's about navigating permits. The good news is that Philippines has streamlined through Executive Order number 32 instead of going through six different agencies sequentially over 12 months. The process is now parallel and accelerated. Here's the sequence. The first one is the LGU building permit from, of course, Ligao, Kamalig, and Daraga. Then the second one, a cap height clearance from Civil Aviation Authority to ensure we don't interfere with air traffic. The third one is the NTC construction permit from the National Telecommunications Commission. Fourth, the community clearance from barangays. Local buy-ins is important. The fifth is the construction and installation. Sixth, NTC acceptance testing to verify performance. Seven, the radio station license for operational use under Executive Order number 32. What used to take and under Executive Order number 32. What used to take 9 to 12 months can now take 2 to 4 months because submissions happen in parallel instead of sequence. Okay, for the summary and key takeaways, let me bring this all together. I successfully designed a two-hop microwave link that connects three municipalities, which are Ligao, Kamalig, and Daraga. I also achieved 99.9995% reliability, exceeding our 99.999% target. That's only about 20 seconds of downtime per year, even in extreme conditions. I did this by carefully selecting LOS sites, appropriate tower heights, high gain antennas, and premium waveguide. Actually, each choice was driven by the reliability requirement, and the total cost is approximately 5.14 million pesos. Yes, it's above the initial budget, but it's realistic for the level of reliability we're delivering. And the design aligns with Philippine regulatory requirements and can be deployed within 4 to 6 months following the permitting. And most importantly, this isn't just a homework project. This design is actually a production ready. The NTC, GAAP, and local government could take this document and hand it to a contractor to build. It works in real terrain with real weather. And actually, this design could also bring reliable communication to rural Bicol communities that currently have no options. So that's a wrap. That's what engineering is about, solving real world problems and with attention to details. Thank you so much. That would be all.